March, one of the most successful ministries going today. Matter of fact, I think he was either a moderator for the McCain-Obama campaign or sometime. He served as a moderator. I read last month in April that he had a 27-year-old son that committed suicide. So I think that for Reverend Warren, if you can think of someone wanting the sagacity to talk to their son, or especially anybody that's had as a parent can understand what he's going through, it's just terrible. To think you've spent your life thinking helping people, but your own son needs that kind of help. And it got me thinking about this issue, and I want to ask you this question. Have you ever had feelings of unworthiness or self-doubt? No? No one here? This is a powerful trip. What an ego trip this group is. Let me ask you a question. If you have had those feelings, I certainly have, where do you think they come from? You know, we think in some cases, we could study this psychology like Reverend Warren said, it could just be blood. It could be in your system. There may be something just really wrong. Or two, I believe that a lot of times we learn these things because we've been taught. Somebody's put that on us in some way. That's how I think they come from. Let me tell you a story. I grew up on a farm, and I had nice clothes for a farm family during school, but after school, I was a ragtag because I was out running in the fields, playing ball, hunting, whatever we were doing, farming. We had cattle. I had an aunt, my father's sister, who lived in Atlanta. She moved to Atlanta. I lived in a small village where all my aunts were around. It was a very close-knit community. And I had an uncle named, I'll just call him Bill, Uncle Bill. Uncle Bill was a Georgia Tech graduate and a salesperson for he was a manufacturer's rep. They would always come Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July, any holiday, and spend the weekend with my aunt who just lived down the street from me. So naturally, I'd always go there and hang out with them as much as possible as a young child because I loved this aunt and especially her husband, my uncle. But this Uncle Bill, who I didn't know that well, but he was really debonair. He's always dressed to the nines. He'd even wear a tie on the weekends. I thought, this is strange. He'd always dressed. And he always had a soda or something in his hand, and he smoked. In those days, my other uncle, they all smoked nonstop. They used to pack there's a whole rigmarole with their cigarettes. Yeah, they did that. And over time, I got to notice that he started making ugly comments to me about how I looked. In those days, we did the barbershop bowl. They just cut my hair. They put a bowl on it for $2 or whatever the barber charged. And I was pretty ragtag on the weekends because I wasn't in school. I got dressed up again for church, but otherwise, I was in the fields or either in the woods. So he made some negative comments, and we used to use that Royal Crown Cola stuff on your hair, try to make your hair stand up. And I'm sure I looked like a greased rat by Friday night by putting that stuff on my hair. But he made some bad comments to me, and it really kind of affected me. Later on as an adult, I learned that Uncle Bill is what we call a working alcoholic. It wasn't soda he was drinking, it was booze. And he was loaded by Friday night, so he was just getting on me because he was feeling bad, and he drank all weekend, and he worked all weekend, he started again Friday night. Also, sometimes religion can be a little bit of a problem. I had a couple preachers, one of their favorite sermons used to be from Psalms. Psalms 51:5. This is David now saying, "Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive thee." Meaning, I was born a sinner. I was born in sin. Ain't that terrible? Don't you think? But you don't think for a moment, you know why David was doing this? He had just ordered Bathsheba's husband to the front line so he could be murdered and he could have Bathsheba. So he's committing murder and adultery when he wrote that. But why would we want to take theology and make that an important place in our religious faith? I got a lot of that. More than one church I got to run. So let me just say this in terms of that. I want to go back to the first of the Bible. I think we should focus on Genesis chapter, hold on, let me see where we are. Genesis chapter 1:27. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God He created him. Male and female He created him. So what's He saying there? We were created in God's image. So one of my basic religious principles is this. Divine love frees me from all limiting thoughts. I am naturally good because God's divinity is in me and in everyone. And I have a story that will explain this a little bit. There was a person who was a professor, and he had gone on vacation with his wife to Gatlinburg, Tennessee for a couple of days. They were trying to have a quiet restaurant dinner, and they noticed a white-haired gentleman going around introducing himself to different people at tables. He said, "Oh no, I hope I don't get bothered with this guy." But lo and behold, he came over. The gentleman said, "Hi folks, how are you doing?" He said, "Where are you from?" And he said, the professor said, "Oklahoma." He said, "What do you do for a living?" The professor said, "I teach seminary at Phillips University." And the gentleman said, "Oh, great, you teach preachers." He said, "Let me pull up a chair, I got a story for you." The professor said, "Oh no, another preacher story. This is just what I need to hear." He teaches preachers. He said, "You know, I was born, my name is Ben Hooper." He shook hands with him. "My name is Ben Hooper. I grew up over the mountains here, just a little ways from Gatlinburg." And he said, "When I was born, my mother wasn't married, and it was really hard on me." He said, "When I went to school, I would, at recess and lunch, I just tried to hide out because they had a lot of names for me, and most of them weren't good." But he said, what happened is when I was 12, we got a new preacher at our church. He said, typically I'd go into church and slide out as quick as possible so no one could catch me. But he said, this new minister at 12 caught me and spun me around as I was leaving and said, "Who are you and who's your father?" And then I thought, oh boy, here comes the white cloud again. Even my preacher's putting this truck on. And the preacher said, "Wait a minute." And he looked at me and he said, "I see a resemblance there." "Well, yes, you are a son of God." And he said, "And listen, don't you forget it." And he clapped him on the back and said, "Go out there and claim your inheritance." He said, "You know what? To them," he said, "that's the most important sentence a person has ever uttered to me in my life." And he said, "I want to thank you for visiting Tennessee, and God bless you." He went on to another table. Then the professor said to his wife, "Ben Hooper, that reminds me, there's been 2 governors elected in the state of Tennessee that were illegitimate. Ben Hooper was one of them."
Oh my
Madam
God.
President.
Thank you, Harry. Being the Toastmaster of the day is sometimes a challenge. For those of you who have served or will be serving shortly, this is my second time in a month, so I almost forgot. Carolyn was kind enough to remind me. So as I scrambled yesterday, Tim Morrell emailed that he couldn't attend to be a speaker today. He asked Diana Loy to fill in. Diana Loy called me and said, "What role is that I'm filling?" And I said, "Speaker." She said, "Oh." So with her was a very special guest. We go back 15 years. Sherry Meltzer and I joined Toastmasters at the same time. And Sherry was with Diana yesterday and agreed to be our guest speaker today.
Awesome.
She's a former member of Talk of the Town Toastmasters, a current Toastmaster. And she's going to share with us a story today which I know will touch your hearts, whether you've heard part of it before or this is your first time. I've shared many experiences with Sherry and know about her dad, who's 90 now. He's an ex-POW of World War II, and he's always pointed out the importance of Memorial Day. Sherry is here today to share her dad's sagacity with you. She's doing speech number 7. I believe it's 5 to 7 minutes, which is research your topic. Hooray! Memorial Day is almost here. Sherry Meltzer.
Oh, hooray! Memorial Day is almost here! And when you grow up in Syracuse, New York, after 120 inches of cumulative snow, and it just snowed on Mother's Day, you can't wait to get out in the sun and the sand and frolic and have fun on Memorial Day! Hey! Oh! Beer! Hot dogs! Picnics! No more winter. Well, at least that's how I felt for a long time growing up when it came to Memorial Day. Meanwhile, my dad would sneak me off to the cemetery on Memorial Day to visit some of his veteran friends that never made it back from World War II. He started to talk to me a little bit about the essence of Memorial Day and the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Anybody out there know the difference?
Yeah.
Hello? See what I mean? We're out there partying on these holidays, and we're not quite sure what we're partying for. Now, Memorial Day is specifically to so we can worship and speak and do as we please. And Veterans Day is to honor those that are living and have served and fought in our armed forces. Two different holidays for two different purposes, both of which we have a grand old time. And it took me a very long time to really stop and think about the essence of these holidays and the fact that 42 million soldiers had lost their lives since the Civil War for us. It took me a long time to think about the essence of the 100,000 men that were MIA. That's missing in action, of which 80% were from World War II. And it took me so long to think about the 500,000 men that were veterans that are now homeless. All of which we seem to not really care about, because I see an awful lot of them out there on the street corner begging for $1 or $2. The majority of those 500,000 soldiers are from the Vietnam War. Most of the homeless are from the Vietnam War. A shameful war that our country supported. Well, it wasn't shameful to me, but it was shameful for others. So do we even know where the holiday came from? Does anybody know what it was originally called?
Besides you, Diane.
Anybody know? No. It was called Decoration Day. It was called Decoration Day, and it started in Waterloo, New York. And there was a drugstore owner by the name of Henry Wells that went around to all retailers and said, let's close Main Street down, and let's get out there, and let's go to the cemetery, and let's decorate all the graves from the Civil War. And at the same time precisely, there was a general by the name of Jonathan Logan who had gotten all the veterans together and put flags in their hand, and they were marching down to the same cemetery at the same time. And in the South, there was a general by the name of Garfield that had organized 20,000 people at Arlington Cemetery and gave a speech for all the fallen soldiers, both Union and Confederate. And in 1982, as all these little proclamations were coming around, and they finally decided to call it Memorial Day instead of Decoration Day, they decided to include the Indian War, the Mexican War, and they decided to include the American Revolutionary War. So all the fallen soldiers were included. And it went on, and all of a sudden that proclamation became Memorial Day. And it was actually President Nixon in 1971 that made it a formal holiday on the last Monday in May, so we could have our long weekend. I say it again, hooray. It's Memorial Day, another long weekend. And in remembrance of the fact that these are for the fallen soldiers, it brings to mind a particular story of my dad's, because he had a best friend. My dad's first name is Leonard, and his best friend's name that he was in basic training with was Leonard.